Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Peter Strong and Ken Phillips.
The reason that we've come together tonight is because that Peter and myself agree on just about everything. But the problem is that I've come to it from the correct perspective and Peter's come to it from the incorrect perspective, you see. So we've both come to the same conclusions on a whole range of things, but Peter's wrong and I'm right. But the first thing I've got to do is I've really got to say a heck of a lot of thanks to Anthony. Anthony's an entrepreneur, right? He's the self-employed guy who got up off his bum, and Connor Court is the name of the street in which you live, yes? Unofficially. And he started his publishing business, and Anthony got out there and started publishing books that no one else would publish, right? And he has just been an absolute stalwart for the alternative point of view. You know, you've got plenty who'll publish the left point of view, sorry Peter, with his bookshop, but you've got very few who'll publish the right point of view. And I was very lucky and very thankful that Anthony picked up my book. It's my conclusions about what's going on in employment and the state of the world and the firm and et cetera, you know, my prescription. But Anthony was the guy. It was fantastic to have someone who'd get up there and take the punt and publish me, I've got to say. Let's be clear on the stats. There are 2.1 million, it's the ABS, 2.1 million self-employed people in Australia. United States, it's 42 million, right? 26% of the population of the working force in the United States. That's according to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service in the United States. Here it's little over 19% of the workforce. 1.1 million of us don't employ anyone, right? We just work for ourselves. I'm one of those. I refuse to employ anyone. I don't want to get caught up in it, okay? The other 1 million of us are silly enough to employ people, okay? We employ about between 6 to 8 million, depending others. So, and of the workforce in Australia of about 13 million, in the small business, so that's the self-employed, the 1.1 million who don't employ anyone, the 1 million who do, and their employees make up about 8 million of the workforce, of the 13 million workforce. And it's about 85% of the private sector workforce. So when you talk of small business, you can talk, what you have to think of is behaviour and motivation and skin in the game. So the small business person, like me, I have my butt on the line and no one guarantees me an income. And that causes certain behavioural and motivation, that happens because of certain motivational things, but also causes certain behavioural outcomes. The self-employed people who are silly enough to employ, right, they are very much like me because they've got their own house on the line, their motivational issues are the same, and we are very consumer-like. Right? Our behaviours are exactly the same as that of a consumer, and our vulnerabilities are exactly the same as that of a consumer, only we happen to have this tag called the employer on us. So traditional policy approach to small business has only focused on the employer. And it's focused on the employer in this traditional left-right sort of thing, right, of the person who controls. But when you think of the employer and think of the distinction between a big business or even a medium-sized business and a small business, from my angle, the small business is the business which is employing people, that is still the individual has the skin in the game, and the business behaviours are that of the motivational issues and the behavioural issues of the person, which means if you have a baby, it's a business issue. If you have a death in the family, it is a business issue. If the business goes down, it is a family issue, right? The things that happen with your business are directly part of the intimacy of your personal life and of your family. When you become a larger business, you become an employment bureaucracy. You have a HR manager, you have an accountant, you have a this, you have a that, until you start to look like, with large companies, they're no different from public sector bureaucracies. There is no physical employer. The employer is a legal artifice. It's something that is within our imaginations. And the union movement want us all in that environment. The industrial relations system, the competition laws are all predicated and based on the understanding that a business is an employment bureaucracy. And for the absolute vast bulk of our businesses, that is a complete lie. Understand what we're now doing and what we're now saying is we're saying to the policy people and to the politicians, all of the construct of our institutions in society and the way we govern our society has started from the fact or the belief that the employer and business was an employment bureaucracy. So the public servants get together, the big business people get together, and the big unions get together, which are just employment bureaucracies without accountability, may I say, right? They all get together and decide what all us wood ducks will do. So we get, like in Plato's Republic, we get the rulers, who are the superior intelligence in society, tell us, the little guys, what we're going to do. So we get handed down. And we're giving a very simple message. Wrong. Wrong. Right? You don't start to understand how an economy and a market operates and how a society operates until you start at its base, at its core, at the individual. And when you understand and accept that an individual is and can be a business, it shifts your entire paradigm about the regulation and your entire approach to the management and the regulation of a society. In other words, big business, big unions and big government should pick up what's decided because of the understanding of the economy and the operation of a society at its base, at the individual level. I'll give you a simple example. Governments in Australia, government institutions in Australia are not subject to the Trade Practices Act. What a load of bull. They are not subject to the same laws that they seek to impose on us, either as business people or as consumers. They exclude themselves from it. What a load of tripe. Apply to them the same laws that apply to everyone else. And these are the sorts of concepts that we're throwing at them. And I've got to tell you, it rocks them. Is that correct? They don't know where to go. They have no concept of what angle to. Politically, how this plays out is very interesting, because what we've got within the Labor movement is a divide, a tense divide, between what I'd call the Hawke-Keating rationalists, who have a tendency to be pretty sensible, and you'll find them in, for example, elements within the AWU and some others, and the complete lunatic left, the CFMEU, the ETU, the AMWU, etc., right? Whereas in actual fact, the bulk of the higher percentage of people in the union movement are in the public service. There are more union members in the public service now than there are in the private sector. Right? The union movement has turned into a public sector organisation, not a private sector organisation. And once again, so their policies and their approach is being dictated by their worldview of being in the public sector. Now, I've got to say, if I was working in the public sector, I would be a union member, no question, because the employment bureaucracy in the public sector frustrates and stands on top of the individuals who are trying to do their job properly. Right? Because the employer is not a physical thing or a physical human, it's an amorphous, grinding, pushing down machine. And there's no space for the individual in it. So that's what you have happening sort of on the left, this tension, on the Labor side, this tension that goes on. On the other side of politics in the Liberal Party, I'll tell you what, in the National Party, there's not a lot of people there who understand small business. They pontificate about it, They think they understand it, but they only see it through the prism of the employer issue. They still see the small business person as an employer. They don't see the small business person as an individual. And they're stuck, in actual fact, we've got the Liberal Party playing to the left-wing view of life. Now, why is this all happening and what's actually going on, right? So we've seen politics since our friend Marx, Karl Marx, got up and rolling. Since then, we've seen politics caught in this left-right divide thing. Yeah? And that's now all changing, or has changed. We once had in Australia, about 10% of the voters were swinging voters. That's now sitting at about 40%. Between 30 and 40% are now swinging voters. And why is that happening? Well, part of it's reflected in what we're now seeing with the rise of the self-employed people. We have a society where, as humans, and particularly in our education system, we are saying, don't glorify a superior person, right? Glorify in yourself, self-actualise, understand who you are, find your own path in life, move forward. And we say this to the young people, and as we get older, we more and more get wiser and say, yeah, I'm the boss of me, right? No one else is. Yeah? I've seen all this stuff about someone is superior or the system is superior, and I don't buy it anymore, right? I've been beaten up by the system and I know all about it, right? I don't want to get involved in the politics of the company. And what we do is we take control of our own life. Goodness gracious, we're allowed to vote, for goodness sake, right? Goodness gracious, we're saying that if you're black, white, lesbian, gay, doesn't matter what you are, we think that that's okay, right? You can go out and be who you are, you're allowed to be. Well, and now what is happening is that realisation in the workspace, that you can be who you are and you don't sit inside oppressed by this system that defines who you are. You define who you are. And where it finds its highest level of expression is in when people become self-employed. Now we're also seeing that there's all this debate going on about sham employment, sham contracting. Right? With the ACTU pushing all these nasty employers pushing people into sham contracting. Well, there's another side of the argument. What about sham employment? What about all those HR managers who will only engage people as employees and deny people the right to be self-employed? What about all those union thugs who get out there and stop people from being self-employed and say, oh, if you want a job, you have to be an employee? So let's have an inquiry into sham employment and have a look at the other side of the coin. So there's the motivational stuff. So that gives you, I hope, an overview of where Peter and myself are playing, I hope, seeking to push the small business, self-employed bit into the political game in a very different way, and that we're being very demanding of the positioning, very demanding, and we're very focused about it, extremely focused about it.